So in a previous video, we talked about the ARC B570. We got a hold of this card because we can't get a hold of B580 for less than 400 bucks. But we had to have something to compare it to. So naturally, I chose the most popular video card on Steam, which is the RTX 3060. Yeah. This is the 12 gig version. That's the one we're going to talk about. Yeah. Okay, I want to start off by saying thank you to all the people, that, especially the people that helped me push me over 1,500 subscribers. But I also want to go back and thank all the people, even from the very beginning, that were some of my first subscribers. You're not forgotten either, and I certainly appreciate it. We've done it up to now. We're going to keep on going, and it's meant the world to me. Now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and get on to what we're talking about with this card. So the reason why I mentioned that it was a 12 gig version is because NVIDIA, in their infinite wisdom, has also created an 8 gig version of this that they put out later. They've done that with several other cards. GT 1030s, they've done that with 3060, of course. They've done that. They've got 6 gig and 3 gig versions of some of our favorite 60 series cards. They're no stranger to doing this. Now, AMD's they're not innocent either. They've done this with 8 gig and 4 gig, especially in the RX 400 and RX 500 series. But not as blatantly as NVIDIA tries to just pass off like there's no difference in these cards. There is, but in this case, we're not so much worried about that because we are checking the 12 gig. The 8 gig is going to be a little bit less performance, not really a factor in these tests. But I wanted to go through and kind of set this up and see just what kind of value or what kind of card this is in 2025. There's a slew of new cards being released this year. Intel, NVIDIA, and AMD all have cards coming out. I mean, like right now. So how does the 3060 still hold up? So I tested this card with a couple of different CPUs. I took a couple of newer CPUs. I took a 12th Gen 12700KF, which is in my editing rig behind me, and you can still see the cover off of it back there because I'm doing other tests. I did it against an AM5 7500F, which is also a pretty popular CPU right now. I'm not going to say budget friendly, but middle of the road. Still is, I would think, pretty performant. And I even took it against the trend being where people are taking older workstations. So I pitted it against a Xeon 6-core 12-thread 2667. And the charts will kind of bear this out. There are some advantages to going with newer, and yeah, some disadvantages. But I mean, we're going to kind of look at these overall. What I did is my same basic test. I didn't do anything fancy. I didn't do ray tracing or anything like that. I'm just looking at the performance. This will give us some kind of idea of just normal gaming. I don't know. People that are watching this video are probably not bearing down and doing super hardcore ray tracing, especially not with a generation that's 2 generations old now. But in any case, it's still a solid card, and we're going to kind of look at that. Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Believe it or not, the 7500F kind of takes a little bit of a lead here. The AMD, it's a newer platform, AM5. We are also testing what relatively new, the DDR5 memory and all that stuff was available for the 12th gen Intels. And while the 1080p numbers were good, the 1440 numbers on the 12700K were a little bit of a surprise to me, but we'll see if that continues. In Borderlands 3 at 1080p, we see something that we what might expect with newer CPUs against an older one, but these didn't really change that much, or they're pretty close to each other at 1440. It was a little bit of a surprise to me, but it shouldn't have been. I mean, I figured the limitations of this graphics card, as we get higher in resolution, they'll end up showing themselves. With Cyberpunk, it's a slightly different story. The 12700KF actually did better than either one of the 2 other CPUs. But I don't know if that's just due to the core count or what have you. The 7500F is actually faster, but if it was just up to core count, well, technically, if you're looking at this at 1440p, the older Xeon and the newer 7500F are right about the same, and they have different core counts. I don't know if that has a whole lot to do with it or not. And it's not until you get down to 1080p and 1080p on low resolution that you actually see some kind of separation in these. Otherwise, these are really, really close. There's not going to be much of a difference in these at all. Taking a look at something newer we've started to add to the benchmarks lately, Black Myth Wukong, the benchmark tool that you can get free on Steam. These three cards are pretty much dead even at 1080p and 1440p. I did it default settings. There's no extras, no fluff, no anything like that. We'll discover later in later videos what happens when we start playing with the ray tracing settings or whatever in this game. But as far as just a raw benchmark with this, we're just taking it right out of the box. Whatever default settings it was for 1080p and 1440, I believe it was high for both of them. We just went ahead and ran, and both of these, they are both sets of resolutions with this card are very, very similar. It didn't have any kind of, I don't want to say any kind of limitation based on the CPU. It's not until we actually get to the esports titles where we have a little bit of a difference here. Now, this we know the Xeon wasn't exactly meant for esports titles. Heck, it wasn't even meant for gaming. But it has done pretty well in basically everything else. This is where we see a little bit of a difference, where the two newer CPUs actually do outpace the older one by quite a bit, with the 12700K again doing better, sort of like it did earlier in Cyberpunk. The newer CPUs do perform better than the old one in this case, but it's not really unless we're looking at something like Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which, let's face it, anything over about 60 frames per second in that game isn't going to matter. You do see a little bit of a fall off with the older, but it's really, I mean, for what this is, it's pretty darn solid. So then you come to the question of, all right, with all the new all the new video cards and all that stuff coming out, and all the hype and everything, should I even try to get a new card? Or if you haven't gotten a card one, say you're still rocking a 1070, like I've had it a couple videos back, you're not losing out a whole lot. But with the prices and all that stuff of these cards being just so out, I mean, let's face it, it's not realistic. Buying a used RTX 3060, if you don't already have one or something comparable, it actually might not be a bad idea. It does have ray tracing, if you so desire. It can take advantage of things like FSR, DLSS. Yeah, so maybe that's not such a bad deal after all. This model would be the one that I'd be looking for, though, the one with 12 gig, especially with bigger games or more games requiring more VRAM. I would look for something more than 6 or 8 gig. Now, that's not to say that something like the 1660 or 1060 that had 6 gig, or even the RTX 2060 is going to be bad. But I think once you get in there where there's more memory on the video card, it might perform a little bit better. It might last you just a little bit longer. We are talking about something where maybe I want to hold off another generation, and maybe you don't want what Intel, AMD, or NVIDIA is offering right now. Maybe you think the price is way too much, and you're looking at buying something used, and you don't know how long it might be until you trade that in. 3060 might be a pretty good deal, especially as the price, it will come down, or it has come down a little bit. Don't be surprised if all those folks that are giving up on the newer, say, 50 series and can't get a 40 series start trying to look for a 30 series. But I think they're probably going to go for, say, a 3070, 3080 or whatever. That 3060 ought to be pretty safe. Just my thought, just my opinion. I'm glad I still have this card. I have almost put it in builds twice and changed my mind. And I'm glad I still have it because it is one of my workhorses. When I go to need something to do another build or do something else or test or whatever, I've got it. And as it turns out, like I said, it's the most popular video card on Steam, so you can't go wrong. The other card that I have that is my true workhorse is a 3060 Ti. That's not pictured in here. The performance is slightly better with that. If I remember right, it's between 8 and 10% better. Maybe some things will be more. I'll have to test that with, say, the 7500, the AMD coming up, not too long from now, but we'll have to see. Now, right now, the used market will set you back anywhere between, say, a little over 200 to about 250, depending on if you're getting the 8 gig or the 12. I would definitely go with the 12 gig if you can get it, because with games and how much memory they need nowadays, that's only going to get worse. Optimization and all that stuff is not where it needs to be, and you're just a lot of these games are going to require more and more video memory. And so if you can get a 12 gig, maybe it'll last you a little bit longer. Obviously, it's going to be half the price of some of the things that are coming out now. And I'm really, at this point, I'm really kind of torn, because you can get for about the same price, you can get an ARC B570 if they're available. But I'm not so sure that B570 is actually a better card or if it's going to last you longer. Now, that B570, I believe, had 10 gig of video memory. If I'm wrong, I'll put it up here, but I believe that was 10. This RTX 3060 has 12, which might be a little bit of an advantage. I'm going to do a video on the 570, look at its ray tracing, but I don't think that its ray tracing is any better off than this 3060 would be. So really, it comes down to your preference. If you're Team Blue and want to give them a shot, maybe that. If you are like something tried and true, then a lot of people on Steam can't be wrong, and it still is the most popular card on Steam. I'm just saying. Anyway, that's all I got for this time. I just thought I would share with my results. I was curious after I was testing the B570 and a couple other things, especially because I was testing against the ARC A750, the B570, and I used this as the in-between and found that the performance was pretty close with all three of them. I thought, well, how well does it hold up with newer CPUs and older ones? So I thought I would try that too. If you got anything out of the video, I certainly appreciate it if you throw a like on the video. If you're not already subscribed, please do that. Thank you so much for all the people that subscribe. I'm so grateful. That really, really means the world to me. And to have 1,500 people be interested in what I have to say is pretty darn incredible. So thank you so much for that. If you're not already subscribed, please consider doing so. Don't forget to visit all my socials. And if you don't do anything else, just do me one favor. And let's be good to each other. Be kind, smile, wave, hold the door open, say good morning, good evening, something. Just anything. A little bit of kindness goes a long way, and it doesn't cost anything to be nice. So, until next time when I get myself into something I got no business getting into, like all that stuff there, that stuff there. Yeah, there's a lot of it. Including some case swaps and platform swapping. Yeah, that's all I got for right now. So, I'll see you later.